Mother, man.
Spreading faster than a case of the clap in a trailer court. Able to shatter eardrums within a 666-mile radius. A podcast more brutal than all the rest. It's Murder Metal Mayhem! All right, this is Pete Altieri here, giving you guys a little bit of a bonus episode this week. As you guys know, we are off this week and wanted to give you guys a bonus and thought we would do something a little bit different. Been talking a lot on the podcast about our brand new series on our YouTube channel called 666 Seconds. And we're doing some on murder, which are true crime cases, current true crime cases. And then we're doing some 666 seconds of metal videos on metal bands, reviews, stuff like that. And those I'm doing with Shane. And so we've got those on a different channel. So I'm going to link to these in the episode description. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to play you a murder and then a murder, going back and forth, 3 different episodes. They're short, so they're 11 minutes and 6 seconds or less. So you're going to get a little taste of 3 different episodes of each. And if you like the content, then go check it out on YouTube. You could subscribe to the channels. It doesn't cost anything. Then you know when we post stuff. The 666 Seconds of Metal channel is brand new, so there's very few subscribers on it. So if you would, please go subscribe to both. And again, I'll link to those in the episode description. I hope you guys like this bonus episode, and we'll see you next week. All right, thanks for checking out another 666 seconds of murder. And if you're keeping track at home, that's 11 minutes and 6 seconds. So each episode will be less than that. And so I want to go ahead and get started. This time we're going to be talking again about the Idaho 4 case, but something very specific. And it has to do with the alternate theories that are floating around out there. So let's check this out. I did a little presentation for you, so I'll let you check that out. All right, so the question is, obviously everybody wants to know who did this. I mean, who could have possibly done it? So many alternate theories out there because there's a gag order on this case, which means that people are going to speculate. A lot of these YouTube creators out there, including myself, that are putting this stuff out and, putting their 2 cents in, which is awesome. I think it's great to have that discussion. But the problem is you got just so much of it. And it's because there's just this gag order on the case and just so few details that we know about. And some of these theories are just really out there. But what I wanted to do is come up with what I thought were the top 3, in my mind, most feasible possibilities here. But I think, free thinking and discussion is great. That's why I'd love to hear what you have to say down in the comments. But keep it civil. We don't need to be getting rude to each other. If you disagree, you disagree. That's totally normal. But I'd like to talk about some of the more plausible theories out there. And again, this is my opinion. Nothing else than that. So take it for what it's worth. Okay, so in my opinion, a plausible theory, I've heard it floated around, is that it had something to do with drugs, a drug-influenced hit, for lack of a better word. Okay, now there have been numerous stories out there that have come out presenting some legitimate facts about the jaded history and some of the drama with Xana's mom and Maddie's stepmom. Now, independently of each other, they're not like working that I'm aware of, working together or doing anything together. And I'm not trying to shame anybody because I know Xana's mom's been out there doing interviews and stuff. I think that's cool. She seems like a nice person. I don't want to sit here and badmouth her, and I'm certainly not trying to imply that either of these two women had anything to do with these murders, at least that I'm aware of. But it could have been maybe a byproduct of something they did. So I'm going to get to it. Now, I saw something extremely interesting on the Thought Riot podcast out on YouTube. And you can get them at Thought Riot Podcast. A very interesting episode that they did about both women getting arrested separately with large amounts of drugs like meth and stuff like that. Both had court dates that were very close to each other, just kind of coincidental, maybe. And it is suspected, again, very allegedly, that they may have been providing some information to the police because neither of them that I know of have gotten any kind of stiff sentences for these drugs that they were caught with. And I thought the Thought Riot podcast did a really good job breaking it down. I'm going to link to that in the episode description below so you can check them out. I really like their podcast. They do lives often. They're really, the two of them together do a really good job. But what really adds to the suspicion is that there was this huge drug bust only a few weeks after their court dates. So it does definitely make you wonder, could that have had something to do with it? Maybe something, somebody retaliating. The fact that the wounds on these victims were so brutal, I mean, it reminds me of like a cartel or gangland style hit. These were not stab wounds that I'm aware of. These were more like slashing wounds, like you would get from something like a machete or a sword or something like that. Definitely not sounding like wounds from a K-bar knife, which is what we've been led to believe is the murder weapon because the sheath was left there. Again, that's very suspicious, but I don't know if these were K-bar knife wounds. Also, could drugs have been part of the reason why there was that 8-hour delay from the two survivors to call 911? Some people have speculated, were they trying to get stuff out of the house? Were they cleaning up and covering up what may have been going on? Don't know this, but certainly suspicious with all the, stuff going on. So definitely makes you wonder, was a cleanup done because there was all those people in the house helping them get rid of stuff? I don't know, but it's certainly plausible. So I wanted to throw that one in. The other one I've heard a lot about is the frat boys, here in the YouTube creators out there talking about the Delta Chi frat house that was right across the street. We know that Ethan was a member of that frat. Ethan and Xana, and I believe Bethany were at a party there that night before. There was some drama between Ethan and one of the other frat members. And allegedly, this other guy, and I'm going to leave his name out. I know others have said it. I'm just going to leave it out. Apparently, he had a thing for Xana and was supposed to also be using steroids. And we know that steroids certainly can create some issues with violence and that roid rage kind of stuff. So don't know, but certainly suspicious that there was a fight. It was split up. And then Ethan, Xana went home. I'm not sure if Bethany was home with them or came home separately. Not sure about that. But it does seem somewhat doubtful that a frat boy on steroids could have organized a posse to go over to this house and do what they did. It sounds just outrageous, but I just don't know. I mean, if somebody was that messed up on drugs or doing, alcohol, I'm not really sure. But, the one thing that is suspicious is one of these frat members was family owned a professional cleaning service. So that certainly makes that you wonder, did they call him over to help him clean up? Because we know there was that latent print outside of Dylan's bedroom door, and that had been cleaned up. And why was it cleaned up? I brought that up in my last video. If you missed that, I did another video on the Idaho 4 case and the 8-hour delay. But I talked about this in that video. But it definitely makes me think about, wondering, why they cleaned up and who may have helped them. It is, though, doubtful, but certainly possible that the frat boys came over to retaliate because him and Ethan had been getting into it, and some insults made about him using steroids and it affecting his organ down below. Now, another thing that adds to the mystery here is that the frat boy left the country soon after this happened. I don't remember where he is or was, but that definitely makes you wonder, why did you up and leave the country? May have been planned to do that. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. Again, another possible, issue there with the frat boys. So I don't know if they were the ones involved, but certainly, warrants a discussion. And then the other one is, of course, Bryan Kohberger himself. We know the police believe he was guilty. He's guilty of this. He's in custody in jail awaiting trial. We do know that his touch DNA was found on that knife sheath beneath Maddie's body. Now, touch DNA, we could do a whole episode on this, may or may not have, come from him directly. It could have been he touched somebody and then they touched the knife sheath. We don't know. The police say they have his car on video and that they hear some pings on his cell phone that puts him there between like 4:05 and 4:20. So I'm not sure. Super tight time frame. I talked about that in my last video. Makes you wonder, could one person have done all that? I just don't know. The video of the car is suspicious to me. I don't know if I would call that a smoking gun. And there is more evidence that we know of about Bryan doing this than anybody else. So, you have to wonder, what evidence do they really have? It certainly makes you think. So what do you guys think? Without more information, we're really just guessing, but I wanted to present some theories to you to see what you think may have happened. I sincerely hope they catch the right person and that this is all put to bed for the victims and their families. So comment below your thoughts. All right. Thanks for your time. And I hope you enjoyed this episode. We'll see you next time on 666 Seconds of Murder. All right, welcome back to 666 Seconds of Metal. I got Shane here with me all the way from Canada. How's it going, dude?
Right on, pretty good. Ready to fucking rip this one up.
Hell yeah, I don't see any icicles coming off you yet, so it's probably not that bad up there in Canada.
Oh, it's been beautiful. Warmest winter ever, man.
Very good. Well, it's about to get real hot in here with this band, that's for sure.
Fuck yeah. Here we got As in Hell. Fucking, and I really have to spill the beans on this one, Pete. Debut album from As in Hell, Impehora, is my fucking album of the year. So if you like old school death metal, the classics,
wow.
Death, Obituary, Bolt Thrower, and Entombed, then you really got to check this shit out. I really can't say anything bad about this album. I mean, it's seriously fucking catchy death metal with some pretty big players involved. As in Hell's a 3-piece Danish band signed to the classic Metal Blade Records, and their debut album, Impehora, was released on September 29th, so pretty new. These guys, they have quite a pedigree behind them. First, we have Michael Poulsen on guitars, and he sings and plays guitar in a little band called Volbeat. But, don't let this
Yeah.
fucking scare you. Don't let this scare you.
Dude.
It doesn't sound like Volbeat, so don't worry. It doesn't sound like
No.
Volbeat.
When I first heard that, I was like, what are you asking me to listen to? Yeah, because I do not like them.
No.
He sings in that band too.
Yeah, it's crazy, eh?
Okay.
He didn't want to
interesting.
sing in As in Hell, so that's he's just doing guitar now.
Nice.
So
But he
it definitely
comes from
doesn't
a
sound
death
like
metal.
Volbeat.
Comes from a death metal pedigree, though, so it's
That's
not
right.
too much
He does,
of a
yeah.
surprise to people
Yeah.
that know him.
And on vocals, we have Mark Grewe, and you may remember him from such bands as Insidious Disease, Leper Colony, and one of my favorites, Morgoth. I get a very
Leper
strong
Colony
death
is actually
vibe.
in my top 10. Leper Colony definitely in my top 10 albums of the year. I love that
Yeah,
album.
really,
I was
eh?
floored when I found out Mark was singing for these guys.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. And Morgoth is one of my old school classic favorites too. So this is just a great album. I get a very strong death vibe from the vocals. And finally, on drums, we have Morten Toft Hansen, and he's played with Raunchy, Necrosis, and Hatespear. These guys are all good friends from way back, and they just really wanted to put out a banger full of nostalgia for all the death metal bands they listened to growing up. In the production, the mixing, the sound, it's all second to none. And the album title, Imperiora, means ungodly hour, but ironically, the album only weighs in at 38 minutes. I thought they could have easily added one more track to it, but that's just me being greedy because it's so enjoyable. They have 3 videos for the album, and of course, they're all fucking bangers. First off, we have Fall of the Loyal Warrior, Island of Dead Men, and the catchy sing-along song Wolfpack Laws. There's also a lyric video for Desert of Doom, and that's another standout. I mean, the whole album is fucking fire. It's filled with catchy death metal hooks. And we're going to watch a bit of one here. We're going to watch Fall of the Loyal Warrior. If you want to cue that up, Pete, please. And this song starts out with a righteous riff, strong riff, and then it hits hard with hints of Bolt Thrower. Throw in a pinch of Slayer and a whole lot of death, and it's great.
Oh, yeah, let's check it out.
Comes the death.
Oh, yeah. You guys are killer, man. some good stuff, Shane. I hear a lot of death when I hear
that's
that song. A lot of
Lot of
those
death.
harmonies were very Chuck Schuldiner in there. Really good stuff, man. I was so impressed with the album.
Yeah,
You told
it's a
me to check
banger.
it out. I bought the shirt and I just got it yesterday. So I was like, hell yeah, just in time for us to record
yeah,
this.
great
I
timing, man.
Like to support the bands.
yeah.
Like to support the bands when I can. So
Yeah. Right on. If you like old school death metal, with sick fucking catchy hooks, go check out As in Hell. Let us know what your favorite tracks are.
yeah, definitely. Let us know down below, and we'd love to hear from you guys. And if you like metal and you want to hear more, check out murdermetalmayhem.com. That's a website for the podcast that we do. And we've got Chris and Joey, and Shane's one of our guest co-hosts. We've got different people we have coming on to talk about different topics. And so a little true crime, a little metal merged
A lot of
into
mayhem.
one crazy, a lot of mayhem merged into one crazy podcast. So if that's your thing, check out the link below in the episode description. So, well, very cool. Anything to add to this one, Shane?
Go fucking listen to it.
Hell yeah, definitely. We'll see you guys next time.
Horns fucking high.
Hell yeah. All right, welcome to another episode of 666 Seconds of Murder. This is episode 7, and that means we're going to be done in 666 seconds or less. And if you're unfamiliar with how long of a time that is, it's 11 minutes and 6 seconds. So let's get to it. Talking about the funeral home in Colorado where they found all the dead bodies. Just an absolute horror show. And I'm going to share this presentation with you, and let's get to it. Now, when I made this slide, I read 189. Then they found 190. So there's 190 at least, probably more, that they found in this funeral home. And we're going to talk about it here. So complaints were coming in about a horrible smell. I can't even imagine it. Coming from the Return to Nature funeral home in Penrose, Colorado in October of 2023. They specialized in alternative means of burial, like where people want to be planted in a tree or cremation, things like that. But when the police got there, they found an absolute horror show. I mean, this is like something out of the worst horror movie you can imagine. I can't imagine being these cops walking into this 2,500 square foot building and piles of dead bodies. I mean, just disgusting, not in any sort of refrigeration. I mean, just out. I mean, just absolutely disgusting. I can't imagine how bad that had to smell. And the disrespect to these families. I mean, just absolutely awful to do this to their loved ones like that. Obviously, falsifying records, the remains that they got, obviously not their loved ones. So, I mean, all sorts of just terrible, terrible things. So the people pictured there on the screen are John and Carrie Halford. They're the ones that are suspected of this. They're the owners of the funeral home. They fled to Wagner, Oklahoma, where they were arrested in early November. So here just about a month ago. And they're being held on a $2 million bond. And they are charged with 190, because it changed since I did this slide, 190 counts of abuse of a corpse, 4 counts of money laundering, and more than 50 counts of forgery. So just an awful couple here. I mean, these two are just the worst of the worst. I mean, just to hear about this is just heartbreaking. Simply just disgusting beyond compare. Hard to imagine being a family member in this situation who paid these people very well to take care of their loved ones, right? This is the most important thing to a family going through a death in the family, right? You want to get that taken care of, especially if the person had like a special request like this. They would have probably wanted to, see that through. And so to have this happen is absolutely horrible. Now, I know I said these people are innocent until proven guilty, but I mean, what the hell kind of response or defense do you have to something like this? I mean, I can't imagine what it would be. I would assume they're going to just plead guilty and be done with this, because I don't know what your defense could be. I really don't. But we'll see, because this case is still fresh and new. I hope the police in Colorado are more forthcoming with the details than with the Idaho 4 or the Delphi case, because those cases are under gag orders and nobody knows anything. Now, I did see that the families of the victims have been asked to provide the remains that they were given from these two to see if they could test and figure out what's going on. So that'll be a whole nother, wrinkle to this case. Just terrible. At the time of this video, I saw in an article I read that 25 of the bodies have been named. They were able to return their remains to the family. I'm guessing, I don't know the date of that article, but there's probably been more, because they're moving through this pretty quick. They want to get this taken care of, I'm sure. But this is going to take a little bit of time. So just awful. So I'd love to know what your thoughts are on this case. Comment below. Let me know what you think. I mean, is there a legitimate reason for the Halfords that they can claim of a reason why they did this? I'm finding that really hard to believe, but I'd love to know what you guys think about that. So, well, thanks for checking out another episode. If you like what I do, you can visit me at the Murder Metal Mayhem podcast. That's a podcast that I co-host every week, and we do a true crime and heavy metal mashup. So if heavy metal's not your thing, that's okay. We do the true crime stuff first, so you can bow out after that, and the rest of you can bang your head along with us. We talk about bands and do all kinds of cool stuff on there. But murdermetalmayhem.com, link to that in the episode description. I have other videos on this channel with some of the other content I do. So check it out, and I appreciate you very much. And we'll see you guys next time. All right, welcome back to another episode of 666 Seconds of Metal. And this time it's episode number 7. Shane, we're just chunking through these things, man. They've been going good. That's right. Passing on the word of some good metal. I've already gotten some good feedback. A couple of the Murder Metal Mayhem listeners said they really are enjoying these spots. So appreciate the kind feedback. Oh,
yeah,
always
that's
good
excellent.
to hear. Always good to hear. Now, we've been mixing these up. Some of these bands are bands you're suggesting. Some are bands I'm suggesting. This is one that I really wanted to talk about. I changed shirts because I wanted to show my support for the band I'm getting ready to talk about. Going to the UK for this one, and the band is called The Bleeding. Definitely a really killer death thrash band. I know both of us really love the combination of those two things.
Yeah.
And this band personifies it, man. They completely nail it. Definitely really, really dig this band. I've gone back and listened to their older stuff and really have fully embraced it, and really, really dig it. So I'm going to share a couple of things with you guys here as we start talking about them. So let you see this here. So yeah, the album art there, you can see it off to the right, is just really, really cool. Really dig these guys. So they started out in London in 2010, and they put out their first full-length release called Rites of Absolution in 2017. So, it took them, a few years to come out with a full length. They did have an EP first, and then that full length, and then their second full length, Morbid Prophecy, which is just absolutely amazing. That came out 2 years later in 2019. And then the newest album, Monocrator, came out in June of this year, 2023. So they have, like all bands, have had some lineup changes, but, they are definitely killing it with this lineup. The only original member, the founding member of the band, Tassos, is the guitarist, and he's kind of the songwriter, main songwriter, and really the driving force behind
He's
the
the
Bleeding.
anchor.
I gave him a lot of crap when I talked to him, and I asked him if he named the band after the Five Finger Death Punch song, and he got a little twisted around for a second. I was busted his balls, but no, obviously not that. We know the Cannibal Corpse album, The Bleeding, is probably more of an inspiration to them. And he said something, but in an English accent, it sounded much more classy than the way I would have said it, but said something about it was unfortunate that people would find that band when they search for his band. So I was laughing, but super cool dude. Now the album is it's amazing. It's definitely in my top 10. I haven't completely sorted out where in the top 10 it is yet, but it is going to be in my top 10. It opens up strong, like all good albums should, with a real killer track. Chemical Lobotomy just keeps crushing and keeps the intensity just fever pitch through the entire 8-song album. Every song is just absolutely amazing. Love the video they did for the song Chainsaw Death Cult, which that's a cool name. That would be a great band name.
That's one of my favorites on the album.
Yeah,
that's one of my favorites.
It's a great song.
That's a great
kind
song.
of got me interested. Yeah. And today, though, I mean, my favorite song on this album differs. Every time I listen to it, it's different. But the latest one is the title track. I love that song, Monocrator, just absolutely brutal. Ties in with the cover art. The cover art's really amazing. But, death thrash is my thing, and these guys hit it right on the right.
That title track, it's got great groove, got some really good chugging to it, and harmonics. You don't hear that too often nowadays, eh?
That's true. Yeah, they did definitely bring it with that song, and the musicianship is amazing on this album. I mean, the songwriting is really good, and you could see the maturation as the band has gone through now 13 years. They've really matured. The drummer, James Lowe, is amazing. Teaming up with bassist Jordan Muscatello, just holding that bottom end down and just keeping it thundering. Love the vocals from Jamie Stungo. More of a thrash feel than a death feel, but I like the way he does it. Really strong.
We got to talk about the vocals here, Pete. Like this, the vocals in this are just fucking evil sounding. And even when the chorus comes in, it just fucking sounds like a chorus of demons. And he's got a very sharp voice, and it's very angry sounding. Like it's not just screaming, but it's very passionate.
Right.
Like he fucking means it.
Yeah, and what's amazing is they all recorded this thing separately. Like they weren't even in a studio because of the pandemic. So the fact that they were able to get those kind of, raw recordings that way is really impressive. And then, like I said, the main man, Tassos, the guitarist, absolute shredder, killer riffs. I mean, tremendous songwriting. just a super cool guy. I had the privilege to interview him for the Murder Metal Mayhem podcast just after the album was released. And it was a lot of fun. It was a really good conversation. So I'm going to play a part of that interview so you guys can check this out and see what you think about it, because I really, really like this band and really thought that, there's a lot here. And I think that
It's worthy, that's for sure.
I think our viewers would definitely like to see this interview. And if you want to watch the entire interview that I did with him, I'll link to that in the episode description so you guys can watch the entire thing. So we'll check back in with you after this clip is over. I posted a review of the Monocrator album, which I absolutely love. It's easily in my top 5 metal albums of the year. And I was wondering, because I didn't really spend a lot of time looking this up because I wanted to ask you, is Monocrator an actual word, or did you guys make that up? And does it kind of tie into a concept for the album?
Yeah, it's actually a real word. It's a Greek word that means soul emperor, or emperor of emperors, or you can replace emperor with ruler. So it's someone who is above everyone else, essentially.
Wow. I had a feeling it was a real word, but I wanted to ask you, and I'm looking at the album cover. I took a guess when I did the review of what that meant. So I hope I wasn't too far off, thinking it was somebody in a throne, ruling over a legion of dead people or the dead. So
yep,
definitely love that album cover. How did you guys end up recording that? Because nowadays things are so much different than they used to be. Back when I started playing in the 80s, obviously going digital or analog, and then saw the digital stuff coming in, and now everybody's recording from home. How did you guys do it?
Well, where do I start? So the previous album, Morbid Prophecy, we did quite a long session that ran across a few days at the studio. And the problem with that is sometimes when you're running within a specific time frame, certain things you might not be happy about afterwards, especially when it comes to the vocals. So this time around, we tracked the vocals over at Jamie's place. So
well, there you have it. A little taste of that interview, Shane. Definitely could tell Tassos is just a really super cool guy. Great face of the band, just really wears it well. He really loves what he's doing, and it's obvious in the music. This album is amazing. I'm glad that you like it as well.
It's awesome. It is really worthy of anybody's top 10 list. And it came out, kind of early in the year. I think maybe it kind of went under a couple people's radar, but, just you like good chugs and thrashy riffs cranked all the way to fucking death metal. You got to check this out.
Fuck yeah. All right. Well, we'll see you guys next time, and appreciate you checking us out on 666 Seconds of Metal.
Horns fucking eye.
All right, welcome back to 666 Seconds of Murder. That means each episode is less than 666 seconds, which is, of course, 11 minutes and 6 seconds. All right, well, let's get to it. We don't have a lot of time. Got a good one for you tonight. This is a case I haven't talked about. You don't hear a whole lot about this case anymore, but recently saw this in my news feed and thought you guys would find it interesting. All right. Well, we're talking about John Wayne Gacy, the killer clown. I mean, this is an old school true crime story for sure. And more Gacy victims. I mean, we've heard about this over the years, and I wouldn't do this if I didn't think there was definitely some credibility here. And so I'm going to get into it with you tonight. And I'll explain where I'm going with this. So for those of you that don't know, I mean, I think most everybody knows about Gacy, but, there may be some that don't. Or just a quick refresher, John Wayne Gacy murdered at least 33 young men and boys in the Chicago suburbs, burying most of the bodies in his crawl space under his home in Des Plaines, Illinois. And he was arrested in December of 1978. He was convicted and sentenced to death in 1980 and was executed in 1994 by lethal injection. And I did think it was a funny aside to mention his last words were, "Kiss my ass." So you got to love that. There have been several documentaries, movies, and podcasts about this case. I mean, Murder Metal Mayhem, we've done an episode on this as well. It's an infamous case and probably one of the main reasons that people today fear clowns, because he was known to dress up as a clown, as Pogo the Clown, and entertain kids at the hospital. Kind of creepy, kind of weird, but that's, where this all comes from, I believe. Now, when he ran out of room at his house, he started putting bodies in the Illinois River. And some have speculated that he put bodies in other places as well. So again, it's not the first time I had heard about this. But enter the name Bill Dorsch. I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Bill or not, but he's a former Chicago homicide detective who was saying for years, I mean years, even while the investigation was going on, that there were possibly more Gacy victims buried on the northwest side of the city of Chicago. So the murders in the crawl space were in Des Plaines, outside the city limits, but now you're talking inside the city limits. And the fact that Gacy was a maintenance man at an apartment building that was located on the corner of Elston and Miami Avenues in Chicago definitely brings some credence to this, story. And at one point, Gacy's own mother lived at that apartment building. Now, Bill has interviewed people who lived in the apartment building at the time, and one that lived across the street from the apartment building, and even did lawn care at the apartment for John Wayne Gacy. So he and the other witnesses, I watched some interviews with them, very fascinating. They talk about these huge holes. I mean, holes big enough that multiple kids were climbing in them and playing when Gacy wasn't around. And these holes would stay there for a few days and then strangely be covered up and through darkness, in the middle of the night. Wake up in the morning, the holes would be filled in. So that's definitely very strange. I mean, even for a maintenance person that's busy, I don't think you'd be doing something like that in the middle of the night. So definitely makes it even stranger that he was burying bodies in the crawl space under his house. So that certainly brings some additional, credence to this story as well. Makes you wonder. So on this podcast I was watching, Bob Motta, who's from the Defense Diaries podcast, he was the one interviewing Bill on this episode that I watched. And Bill talks about going to the police about this. Nobody would listen to him. He was told, "We don't want any more bodies." I'm sure they didn't. It was embarrassing. The city of Chicago sure as hell didn't want any bodies within city limits. There was one docuseries I saw in the last couple of years that mentions this, and that Gacy, was potentially burying bodies at this location. But in response to this, the city of Chicago said, "Okay, well, we'll dig and we'll look, But the one spot they looked at was the one spot on the lawn that the scans they did showed no disturbance of dirt. So that was kind of like here's a bone. We looked, sorry, nothing to see here. But they didn't look where they were supposed to look. So it was bogus. So now he's teamed up with Bob Motta. Bob, if you know, is he's an attorney. His dad was ironically Gacy's defense attorney during the trial. So very interesting that Bob's involved in this. Bob is going to be approaching the home or the owner of the property to see if they'll allow a dig to take place, whether it be in the lawn, or also one of the witnesses talked about the parking lot for the building. When they put the blacktop down, they dug down like 5 or 6 feet. And construction experts said that wouldn't be necessary when you're doing blacktop. And Gacy was in the construction business, so he would have known that as well. So definitely suspicious. Are there bodies out in the parking lot? Don't have any idea. One of the witnesses said that when he was asked how many holes he would have suspected he would have seen in the lawn, he would guesstimate about a dozen. So there could be quite a few bodies here. And scans they did showed disturbance beneath the ground that would be, it would coincide with, possibly bodies being buried there. So I'll link to the episode I'm talking about on Bob's Defense Diaries channel on here on YouTube. I'll link to that episode where he interviews Bill about this book, Omnipotent, that he put out. And it just came out in September of 2023. I bought the book. I have not read it yet. I just bought it because I'm definitely really interested in this. And I'm going to keep this one on my radar because the Gacy case is interesting to me. I used to play in a band and I wrote a song about Gacy. So it's always been kind of a thing for me. I'm not originally from Illinois, although I live here now, but this case was, before my time, but certainly very infamous and very well known. And so I'm fascinated by it. And this story is interesting. Coming from a former cop, and Bob Motta, I actually know Bob. We spoke at the same convention a few years ago. Super good guy. I really like the Defense Diaries channel here. So I definitely give a lot of credence to this, given those two individuals' involvement in it. So curious what your thoughts are. Do you think Gacy's got some more skeletons in the closet, so to speak? I'd love to hear from you. Well, I hope you guys like that presentation and love to get some feedback from you. And if you're interested in what I do, you want to check me out every week on the Murder Metal Mayhem podcast. Thanks. We'll see you next time. All right, welcome back. Episode 8 of 666 Seconds of Metal. That means that each of these episodes is 666 seconds or less. That's 11 minutes and 6 seconds. And I got Shane here with me all the way from Canada. What's up, dude?
What's up? Enjoying fucking El Nino, man.
Yeah, it's like in the 50s here. It's crazy. It's crazy. But tonight, we're going to talk about what got us into heavy metal. So everybody's got their own little journey here. So Shane, why don't you start it off? What got you going on into metal?
Yeah, well, right on. Early on, I really didn't have the standard influence of like older brothers or cool cousin or anything like that. So my early influences came from my parents. There was no Barney or anything like that growing up. So I was raised on rock and roll and 70s disco. I know way too many disco songs. Most of my other influences were from the radio. I started being drawn to songs with emphasis on heavy guitar stuff like Aldo Nova, Fantasy, Kim Mitchell, Go for Soda, just a little bit more guitar driven. And, sure, a couple friends had older brothers that listened to Kiss, maybe AC/DC, but I was never really into that. And then it got into hair metal, 83, 84, 85 era. And it was all about the hair metal. I started listening to like Quiet Riot, Def Leppard, Rat, Helix. Then I started noticing the jean jacket patches for Iron Maiden and Judas Priest. And fuck, I was deep into the Iron Maiden, man. They were a real catalyst for me. Then it started into the Sabbath, Priest, Ozzy. So things started getting a bit darker after that, darker and heavier than the hair metal. Then 86, 87 came along, and those hit really fucking hard. Every metalhead out there knows 86,
Oh, yeah.
I don't know how or why. It just felt like a natural progression. I was living in a isolated area at the time, so I didn't have satellite TV or record stores, but I did discover metal zines and the old Columbia Record Club. Ordered everything through the mail. Right. Yeah, that Columbia Record Club was great. A great way to build a collection.
Wasn't it?
Yeah. And I'd call record stores to order stuff and, I'd start bullshitting with the guy and he would recommend stuff and I'd end up buying what they're talking about. And yeah, that was 86, 87. So there are greats like Slayer, Rain and Blood, Master of Puppets, Peace Cells, Among the Living. And so those are classics, and that led me to Overkill, Exodus, Testament. So the big seven right there.
Right.
Then around 90, 91, it was death metal. Discovered death metal. I was finally out of isolation, had access to record stores and venues to see shows. And death was just the next level after thrash, just kicked it up a notch.
Right.
When I first heard Spiritual Healing, it was like, fuck, this is great. This is what I wanted all along. And
right.
Obituary, Slowly Rot, Carcass, those were just put me over the edge. That was it. Those were my big influences. And right around that time, though, what else was coming out was grunge. And yeah, I like that too. So got a lot of grunge influences, Faith No More, Nirvana, Butthole Surfers. At the same time, still listening to heavier stuff, Sepultura, Pantera.
Right.
White Zombie, Fear Factory, stuff like that. And that's where it pretty much stayed, being the same ever since. Just a very eclectic mix of various genres of death and thrash and other metal.
Don't
cool. Suppose it'll ever change. I'll end up in the old folks home listening to that.
Well, our paths are very different here. I was really interested to hear what you had to say. I grew up with a father that didn't even have a radio in his car. Refused to have a radio in the car. So my mom listened to like top 40, but my dad was like not about it at all. So anyway, I was in junior high and I remember and they never would fly today. They brought a rock band in and we had like an assembly in the gym and this shit was loud. I mean, they were ripping, playing like Heart and Aerosmith and stuff like that. This would have been late 70s. And so I was just like, holy shit, what did I just see, and then started buying albums, bought Blizzard of Oz, and the first Van Halen album.
Classic.
Started listening to that stuff, some Zeppelin. And then, once I started driving, I remember my very first concert, 1983. Iron Maiden, Peace of Mind. That was my first metal show, and I was totally floored. Of course, being a bass player, I just had started playing, and I got to see Steve Harris. Totally blew my mind.
That'd be a dream, no doubt.
Totally blew my mind, And like you, I listened to some of the hair metal stuff. But then I remembered going to see Metallica on the Ride the Lightning tour, and it was a blizzard. And I went and I got to see Cliff Burton, and that totally changed everything. And that's what got me into the heavier stuff, because they were playing with Armored Saint and Wasp, and I liked all three of the bands, but I didn't like Metallica as much at that time because it was just a little bit much for me at the time, listening to more of the mainstream. But then when I saw them, I was totally blown away, and then I got into the, you know, Venom and Slayer and Merciful Fate and Overkill and all those bands, a lot of the bands you mentioned, Testament, Exodus, Anthrax, all that stuff. You know, I grew up on the East Coast in the U.S., and so those were, you know, my path. And then strangely, I had a real bad fallout with my first band I was in, and I completely detached from music for 10 years, from 1988 to 1998. I didn't buy one album. The only stuff I listened to was stuff I already had. So it was like Rip Van Winkle. When I came,
you know, that's very coincidental to me, though. Actually, I had a decade where I had health problems and I was getting headaches all the time. Didn't listen to anything for like 10 years.
Interesting. Yeah, for me, coming back in 98, I missed the whole grunge thing. So everybody bitches about that, and I'm like, I just like fell asleep through the whole thing. So when I came back into the scene in 98, I started playing in Low 12 and all that, and just kind of picked up where I left off. And I've been getting more into death metal in the last few years. I mean, I've liked some death metal, but it was never a thing I would go to unless it was on. But then, no, maybe sometime in the early to mid Low 12 era, which would have been 98 to 2016 when we stopped. But that's when I started listening to, you know, Carcass, Cannibal Corpse, Obituary, and some of that sort of stuff too. And doing the podcast, Murder Metal Mayhem, you know, exposed to a lot of music, a lot of heavy stuff. And I've always gravitated towards it. I think it's just, it seems to fit my personality, and I love the subject matter and the whole imagery of it. I really dig the heavier stuff. So thrash, death, for me are the two genres I like the most, but I do like some classic metal as well. If I'm with the wife, we're usually doing more of the classic metal than the super heavy stuff. But
as a horror author, you know, I could really see the tie-in.
Yeah, the subject matter, especially like King Diamond. I love the stories, you know, in the King Diamond albums. I really love that. I loved Operation Mindcrime when it came out. I thought it was, you know, really cool, even though they pretty much took the 1984 story. Everybody made them out to be like these savants, but it's like, I don't know if I'd go that far, but anyway, it was a great album. It's just the story was kind of borrowed. But yeah, so I thought that was cool. I think, you know, if anybody watching us, metalheads out there, everybody's got a story, and I just thought it would be cool to share our stories. So very cool. Well, I hope you guys, enjoyed that.
That was fun to hear, Pete.
Oh yeah, definitely. All right, guys. Well, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. We appreciate it. Drop some comments below. Let us know what you think. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. And we'll see you guys
Let us know where you started. Horns fucking high.
That's right. Horns high. We'll see you next time. All right. Well, thanks for checking out this bonus episode. Hope you like the 666 seconds videos. A lot of good content on there. So again, I'll link to both channels in the episode description. If you're into YouTube, you may already be a part of this. If not, then get your ass over to the channel and subscribe to it. Got a lot of people really digging on it. So hopefully you guys do as well. And again, thank you very much. We'll see you next time. Horns fucking high.
Mother, man.